I told Kevin I wanted a divorce. I don't want anything except the money. Kevin sneered with his hands in his pockets. You're even giving up on the son you love so much. I'm giving him up too, because, for his 5th birthday wish, my son said, "Can Dad and Mom get a divorce? I want Aunt Melissa to be my mom." Chapter 1. I handed the divorce papers to Kevin. He looked at them as if they were just another ordinary document on his desk. His gaze was cold and distant. Perhaps the only time I felt his passion was during those relentless nights. "Diana, if you want to throw a tantrum, at least choose the right place. This is the office." He was certain I wouldn't go through with the divorce. To him, this was just another jealous ploy. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I had been waiting in the guest room, just like any ordinary visitor, for 3 whole hours, all the while enduring the pitiful glances from others. How could that be considered a tantrum? When Miss Melissa comes to see the boss, she doesn't have to wait even a minute. So, the rumors about Kevin hating his wife are true? They were true. Their boss really didn't like his wife. The person he liked had always been Melissa. "Kevin, I want a divorce, and I want it quickly." "Diana, what are you doing?" Only then did Kevin lower his eyes to look at the papers. "Diana, you're asking for just this much money in the divorce?" "Yes. When I got pregnant by accident, he had originally offered me the sum as compensation to keep me away from him. But I didn't leave, because I am a character in a transmigrated novel, assigned a task by the system. Giving birth to Lucas and marrying Kevin were my tasks, no matter how hard I tried. Though, I couldn't warm Kevin's heart. There is no future for us. This money will be my delayed compensation. The 50 million yuan on the agreement was a drop in the bucket for him. But for me, it was a fortune, enough to live comfortably. Kevin stood up, looking down at me from above. His tailored, expensive suit made him appear even taller and more imposing. He sneered with his hands in his pockets. "Just the money? You're not even keeping the son you love so much?" I smiled faintly. "No, I'm not." Chapter 2. I used to love Lucas dearly. After all, he is my flesh and blood. For 5 years, I poured all my patience and love into every step of his growth. Maybe Kevin's indifference to Lucas was because of his hatred for me. When Lucas was born, Kevin's only reaction was a simple remark. "He looks a lot like Diana." After that, he handed Lucas over to the housekeeper without a second thought. Strangely, Lucas adored Kevin. He had an incredible talent for language. At just 3 years old, he could coldly say to me, "Dad doesn't come home because of you." "Mom." I brushed it off as childish nonsense. But by the time he turned 4, he met Melissa for the first time after she returned from abroad following her divorce. When he got home, he said to the housekeeper, "No wonder Dad likes Aunt Melissa. I like her too. Aunt Melissa is gentler than Mom, and she makes me happier. All because I didn't let him eat too many sweets." He pouted angrily. As I walked out of the kitchen, I heard his complaints. Holding back the discomfort in my heart, I softly said, "Lucas, Mommy will make you some new candy." Mommy's handmade candy with snow pear and hawthorn. It's delicious and healthy. But he grabbed the candy I made and threw it in the trash with force. He shouted, "I don't want your garbage. I want the fancy candy Aunt Melissa brought from Italy. So what if I get cavities?" I stared at him in a daze. How much my son resembled his father. They were both so cold. Especially on his 5th birthday. Both father and son invited Melissa. While I was putting in the candles, the long-lost voice of the system suddenly echoed in my mind. "Host, sorry to keep you waiting. I'm back." Even though no one else could hear it, I instinctively walked outside the room. "Host, your mission is complete. You've earned enough points to go back now." In my original world, I had fallen into a coma due to an accident. I made a deal with the system, complete the task, and I would wake up. "You can choose to stay if you want. After all, you have a family now." In your original world, you were all alone. While I hesitated, Lucas made the decision for me. Just as I stepped back into the room, I heard his birthday wish. His voice was clear and loud, with no intention of hiding it from me. "Can Dad and Mom get a divorce? I want Aunt Melissa to be my mom." Everyone froze. Kevin frowned slightly. Pick another wish. Melissa covered her mouth, laughing. Oh, you can't say that. What a cute kid. But the smugness in her eyes was unmistakable. I smiled. Then I turned to the system and said, "Take me home. I don't want to wait another second." Chapter 3. But the system told me bad news. Ever since the central system took on too many hosts for second and third missions, there's now a cooling off period before you can leave the system. I was stunned. The system cleared its throat. It's like the divorce cooling off period you humans have. You need to wait. Wait for what? Damn it. I silently reminded myself to stay polite and asked, "How long?" 3 years. 3 years? System, are you afraid that by the time you finally get your act together, the whole thing will have gone cold? The system paused for a moment. Host, your insults are quite sophisticated. After 3 seconds of silence, it added, "As compensation for my long absence, I'll add an extra third to your points, allowing you to wake up from your vegetative state in perfect health." Fine, but let me finalize my divorce first. That's why I'm standing in Kevin's office right now. Kevin, let's get divorced. Kevin lit a cigarette with a sharp flick. He blew out a smoke ring, smirking with a devilish charm. "Diana, have you forgotten? Who was it that said 5 years ago she would die without Lucas?" Those were my words. That year, Kevin heard about Melissa's marriage abroad. He spent an entire night tormenting me. The next day, I developed a high fever and lay burning up in our house for 3 days. Alone. In my dazed state, I forgot to take the medicine. Later, I found out I was pregnant with Lucas. When Kevin found out, his initial response was cold. He told me to get rid of the baby. I remembered the system's warning, if you abort the baby, the mission fails. You know the consequences. Host. So, I begged Kevin, if I lose this child, I'll die. If I hadn't begged him, with his ruthless approach to business, he would have had plenty of ways to deal with me. Kevin was cruel to everyone, including himself. His only weakness was Melissa, the girl he grew up with in the orphanage who once saved him. Later, she was adopted by a wealthy family. Kevin had a wild streak from a young age, fighting his way up from being a street thug to becoming a business mogul, all to gain the approval of Melissa's adoptive parents so he could marry her. But before he could give her the massive pink diamond he had prepared for her, the news of her marriage reached him. It was much later that I learned why Kevin suddenly proposed to me. It was because of something Melissa said. "Kevin, I got married. I hope to hear your good news soon." Chapter 4. I looked at Kevin's handsome face, but all I could think was, "I hope I never have to see him again." I calmly said, "Since both you and your son like Melissa so much, after the divorce, you two can start a family, and everyone will be happy. Isn't that a good idea?" Kevin narrowed his eyes on me. One of his perfectly shaped hands lifted my chin. He sneered, "Playing hard to get?" Then, his smile vanished as he coldly said, "If it's a game you want, I'm in. And one more thing, after the divorce, without my permission, you are never allowed to see Lucas." Was that a threat? In the past, it would have been a devastating blow to me, because love makes you vulnerable. But now, I don't want to love anyone anymore. So, I have no weaknesses. Under his provocative gaze, I calmly replied, "All right." He froze for a moment, his eyes darkening. Grabbing the pen, he swiftly scribbled a few strokes on the agreement. Then he tossed a copy at me. I picked it up and turned to leave. Kevin clenched his jaw. "Diana, get out of the Jiang family's house tonight." Fine. My emotions were eerily steady, but then I paused, smiling as I asked him, "We haven't even gotten the divorce certificate yet, and you're kicking me out already? I'm not leaving for free. Please arrange for the alimony payment in advance." "Thanks." A trace of anger flickered across Kevin Jiang's face, but based on what I know of him, he's fairly generous with money. I wouldn't be surprised if I received the 50 million tomorrow. Good enough. Chapter 5. Kevin felt an inexplicable irritation as he watched Diana walk out of the office without looking back. At that moment, his assistant came in with some documents. He had been with Kevin for many years, practically a confidant. "Boss, is Diana really going through with the divorce?" Kevin, puffing on his cigarette, responded coldly. She's just acting out. She wouldn't dare. How could she bear to leave Lucas behind? The assistant chuckled. True. She loves you and the child so much. She's probably just throwing a little tantrum. A little comfort from you will sort it out. No need to comfort her. From what I know of her, within 3 months, she'll come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. The assistant smiled, placing the contracts on the desk before leaving. Kevin gazed out from the 30th floor, at the thousands of lights flickering below. For some reason, he thought of Diana from years ago. The first time she was with him, she had been nervous and scared, like a helpless little rabbit. Her eyes had turned red, her voice trembling. She had said things that made no sense to him. Kevin, I'm not just here to complete a mission. I really like you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this with you. Kevin, please be good to me from now on, okay? Kevin had silenced her rambling by sealing her lips with his own, and silenced her soft crying for the entire night. All these years, Diana had been obedient and submissive. The only thing that had angered him was when she had the nerve to use their child to trap him, and absurdly said, if the child is gone, the mission will fail, and I'll cease to exist. He had to punish her for that. So for 5 years, he never showed her any kindness. After all, she had nowhere to go, and he assumed she would stay by his side until the day she died. Her naive pleas echoed in his ears once more. Kevin, I want to have a cute child, a family of 3, living in a cozy little home. Wouldn't that be nice? No, a person like him had no desire for a family. He had never had a family growing up. Now that everything was within his grasp, he needed it even less. The day Diana asked for a divorce, for some reason, he skipped a dinner meeting and came home early. Where's Diana? The housekeeper quietly replied. Madam moved out this afternoon. Kevin only felt more irritated. Though he didn't show it, he merely sneered. She's putting on quite the act. With that, he walked into his study, paying no further attention. Chapter 6. After receiving the divorce papers, I went home. I packed a few simple things and was ready to leave. Lucas was sitting in the living room, playing on his tablet with a candy in his mouth. Colorful wrappers littered the floor. He glanced up at me and said indifferently, Dad said I can have them. Aunt Melissa gave them to me, so don't bother. I smiled. I don't care. You can eat 100 of them if you want. I crouched down and pinched his cheek. You're the one who will get cavities, not me. Lucas, I'm leaving. Where to? Making room for your new mom. I won't be coming back here anymore. Lucas frowned, his expression a mirror of his father's. Mom, stop talking nonsense. Dad said you're an orphan, and if you don't cling to him, you've got nowhere else to go. Mom, grow up. Will you? Aunt Melissa would never act so childish. You're way too old to be running away from home. Just go. Mom, I won't miss you. He lowered his head and continued playing his game. In the past, I would have gently taken away his tablet. Then I would have said, how about Mom playing with your Legos? How about Mom taking you swimming? How about Mom reading you a storybook? I would have sacrificed so much of my time for self-improvement just to provide him with quality time. Now, I don't care anymore. Whoever wanted to deal with him could. All right, Lucas. Let's hope you can keep that tough attitude. With that, I dragged my small suitcase out of the Jiang family's house. The warm sunlight hit me. It stung my eyes a little, but 4 words came to mind: face the sun and live. Chapter 7. I rented an apartment in a boutique community, 1 unit per floor with 2 elevators. No need to buy, after all. I wouldn't be able to take it with me in 3 years. The neighborhood was scenic and pleasant, and when I opened the window, I could see the ocean, but I could also see someone walking toward the sea, a tiny figure, slowly heading alone toward the waves. Instinctively, I rushed downstairs in my slippers. Across a road and a strip of greenery was the beach. I scooped up her small body in my arms. Where are your parents? The little girl looked about 3 years old, her round eyes like big grapes. Her eyes were wet, as if she had been crying, but she didn't say a word, just tightly clutched the hem of her dress. Sophia, a young, handsome man walked over. I hadn't noticed before. but he had been sitting on a hammock under a tree on the beach, watching her the whole time. "Thank you," he said. "But don't worry. She wouldn't have gone any further. I was watching." He reached out to take the girl. "Sophia, let's go home with Dad." But the girl clung to my neck, refusing to let go. Her soft, little voice whispered 2 words. "Hold me." The man froze for a moment, then smiled. This is the first time Sophia's ever asked a stranger to hold her. The little girl was soft and smelled like milk. So cuddly I couldn't bring myself to push her away. I had no choice but to carry her back to the community. To my surprise, they lived next door. The man thought for a moment and said, "Sophia seems to really like you. I know you're single and currently unemployed. It's just the 2 of us, father and daughter. I live a clean life. No bad habits. I'm a doctor." I handed the child back to him, in a voice low enough that the child couldn't hear. I said, "Even if you're a doctor, you shouldn't be using your kid to hit on women and prying into my personal information. You look like a male model, but your behavior is so sleazy." He stared at me, stunned. "Diana, I was just asking if you could help take care of Sophia for a while, at least until I find a nanny she likes." "Of course. I'll pay you whatever you ask." "Aw, so that's what he meant." He cleared his throat. "And about your personal information, I know it because I'm your landlord." After confirming the details, I realized he was indeed the landlord. I've always been someone who can admit my mistakes and adjust accordingly. "Sorry, Mr. Landlord. I'm the one who was being sleazy." Chapter 8. Maybe it was the sight of that little girl's pitiful eyes that softened me. I agreed to temporarily help take care of little Sophia. She's very quiet and doesn't talk much. When she's not at preschool, she often brings over her little stool and sits quietly, watching me arrange flowers or paint. After I finish each task, she claps her tiny hands and praises me. "So amazing. Diana, you're so amazing." I had her call me by my name. I like it that way. Being friends with the child. Sometimes I get lost in thought for a moment. Lucas never did anything like that. He would always complain, "Mom, this is so boring. Play Legos with me." Sophia is such a sweet and adorable little creature. Truly a healing presence. The only odd thing about her is that she often cries out for her parents in her sleep. She wakes up with her eyes wet. I feel so bad for her, so I hold her gently and comfort her in a soft voice. I give her one of my homemade pear and hawthorn lollipops. She pops it in her mouth, her eyes squinting into happy little crescents. She gives me a kiss, sweet with the taste of fruit. When her dad, Sam, gets home from work, she proudly tells him, "Dad, Diana's candy tastes better than the ones you buy." Sometimes, she doesn't even want to finish it in one go, nibbling on it slowly. I laughed. "Go ahead and eat it. If you like it, I'll make more." It turns out that the things Lucas never cared for are treasures to someone else. Before the divorce, my whole life revolved around Lucas. Even if I left the house for a short time, I'd worry about him getting hurt or falling. Maybe having Sophia around helped. Since leaving the Jiang family, I barely think about Lucas or anything from that life. In fact, the housekeeper has contacted me several times. "Lucas is having trouble falling asleep without your bedtime stories. He'll get used to it. Lucas has a toothache. Would you come back to be with him?" "No, I'm not a doctor." Chapter 9. A few days later, I unexpectedly ran into Lucas. Sam had gone out of town for a conference, and I was helping by picking up and dropping off Sophia for a few days. But I had overlooked one detail. Sophia's new preschool was the same one Lucas attended. Sam really spared no expense, sending her to such an outrageously expensive private school. I carried Sophia out of the car and dropped her off. That's when I bumped into Lucas. He was getting out of the car, and Kevin was sitting there with his usual stoic expression. Lucas opened his mouth, ready to call out Mom, but the words got stuck in his throat. "Even though we're divorced, he's still my son, an old acquaintance." I greeted him casually. "Hi, Lucas." But he didn't respond, puffing up like a little blowfish, stomping angrily into the classroom. And Kevin, my ex-husband, was also an old acquaintance I didn't care to greet. I didn't expect him to step out of the car. lowering himself to speak first. I told you, without my permission, you're not allowed to see Lucas. I laughed in disbelief. I didn't see him. It was just a coincidence, believe it or not. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him. Kevin let out a derisive snort behind me. Diana, how long are you going to keep up this tough act? Chapter 10. Diana had been away for more than a month. Kevin didn't understand. She was just a slender woman. After all, why did the house feel so much emptier without her? But it wasn't something that really bothered him. It was Lucas who cried all the time. He kept pestering the housekeeper, asking, "When is Mom coming home?" Kevin couldn't figure out how he felt about Lucas. Maybe because he had been abandoned as a child, left near a garbage dump. He had never experienced what it felt like to have parents. So, he didn't quite know how to be a father. Stop crying. What does a boy look like when he's always crying? Lucas sniffled. Dad, can you tell me a bedtime story like Mom? No, you don't have to sleep if you don't want to. Lucas blinked in surprise. In the end, Kevin sat by Lucas's little bed and started telling him a story. The more Kevin talked, the more irritated he became. He should be in his study, reviewing financial reports. Why was he sitting here reading children's books? With a sharp clap, he closed the book. Lights out, sleep or don't. It's up to you. Either way, he wasn't telling another story. Lucas pouted but reluctantly slipped under the covers. For the first time, Kevin felt that Diana's impulsive decision to leave had disrupted the order of his life. That frustration festered until he saw her at Lucas's preschool a few days later. The annoyance seemed to fade a little. Of course, she couldn't stay away from her son. She must have deliberately chosen the one day he personally took Lucas to school. She was just being stubborn, acting out. Why give up being Mrs. Kevin to cause all this drama over a divorce? Housekeeper, give Lucas a few days off from school. He doesn't need to go. Kevin wanted Diana to waste a trip. Want to see your son? Fine, beg for it. But 3 days later, the housekeeper hesitantly reported, Madam is still going to the preschool every day. Boss, it seems Madam is dropping off someone else's child. She hasn't made any effort to see Lucas. Kevin paused in disbelief. Chapter 11. Sam kept his word. By the 3rd month of me helping with Sophia, he had found a gentle nanny to look after her. Out of habit, I still helped when I had free time. Saying I was looking after her wasn't quite right. It felt more like we were keeping each other company. When Sam wasn't busy, he often cooked for me. Maybe it was because of his medical profession. He would always debone the fish first or cut the meat off the bone before cooking. But I had to admit, it tasted pretty good. Each time, I felt a mix of fear and satisfaction as I finished the meal. After dinner, Sophia would sit at the small table in the living room, playing with magnetic tiles as usual. We would sit on the couch, chatting. There was an inexplicable sense of peace and tranquility in the air. I heard from the nanny that Sophia has been calling out for her parents again in her sleep. I said. Sam gave a quiet She needs time to adjust to the new nanny. I couldn't help but ask, did you do something that upset her? Making her cry in her sleep? Sam lowered his voice. Sophia's parents passed away in an accident last year. Sophia needs time to adapt emotionally. I froze for a moment. Then who are you? A trafficker? Sam couldn't help but smile. What are you thinking? I'm her uncle. After my sister passed, I adopted her. I raised her as my daughter so she wouldn't be treated differently by others. I patted his shoulder. That's pretty responsible of you. Suddenly, Sam leaned in close. I could even smell the faint scent of fresh grass on him. Diana, do you think a man like me, single, raising a child, could still attract a woman? Of course. You're handsome, good at your job, and, most importantly, you're caring. Do you like me? The conversation took a sharp turn. I was caught off guard. I can't. Why not? In 3 years, I'm going back home. Sam's soft smile faded. There was a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Diana, is it because you still can't forget your ex-husband? I laughed. How could that be? I heard he's getting married soon. Sam's eyelashes fluttered, and his eyes brightened. There was a barely concealed excitement in his voice. Really? Should I send him a grand gift to congratulate him on his wedding? I blinked in confusion. Sam, why are you so excited about my ex-husband getting married? He looked as if it was his own ex-husband getting married. Chapter 12. It had been nearly 6 months. There were no signs that Diana intended to come back. She seemed to have left cleanly and decisively. Kevin was busy every day, and thoughts of Diana rarely crossed his mind. Lucas had also mostly stopped crying, but he often sat, staring blankly at the wooden puppet Diana had made for him. The housekeepers took good care of him, so Kevin had no concerns. But Melissa had been hinting at something for a while now. Kevin, do you think a pink diamond would look good on my finger? Rumors were circulating that Kevin was going to marry Melissa soon. Kevin wasn't sure if Diana had heard the rumors. Melissa had been the girl he liked for as long as he could remember. Maybe childhood memories leave the deepest impressions. When he first arrived at the orphanage, he had been thin and weak, but his eyes were fierce, like a wild cub refusing to give in. Because of that, he was often bullied by the leader of the orphanage kids. One day, they had beaten him up badly. It was Melissa who ran to get the director, making the group scatter. Melissa handed him a fruit candy, smiling sweetly. Here, it's very sweet. Yes, it was sweet, the sweetest thing he had ever tasted as a child. He never doubted that Melissa was the woman he loved most. And yet, deep down, a small part of him seemed to disagree. For example, he found himself unexpectedly driving to Diana's apartment. He watched as Diana, an unfamiliar handsome man, and a sweet little girl laughed and walked into the community together. He recognized the man. It surprised him a little that Diana knew someone like that. When Diana came out alone, he blocked her way, looking at her with a half smile. Staying this calm this time? Diana froze for a moment when she saw him, but said nothing. Shouldn't she be happy that he had come? Wasn't this her chance to reconcile? Her silence irritated Kevin for some reason. Diana, you know my temper. Once I've made a decision, I won't change it. If you still want Lucas, move back home. Otherwise, once I marry Melissa, you won't have a chance anymore. Diana's expression was just as calm as it had been 6 months ago when she asked for a divorce in his office. Congratulations. Thank you for going through the trouble of coming to invite me to the wedding personally. A sharp pain pierced Kevin's chest. An inexplicable anger flared up inside him. Diana, do you think you've caught a big fish now? Chapter 13. I blinked, surprised. What big fish? Kevin sneered. The Crown Prince of South City. Sam. I vaguely remembered Kevin mentioning him before. In the business world, Sam's family in South City was the toughest competitor. They controlled both legal and illegal territories. With immense wealth, Sam might seem like just a simple doctor, but he's actually the only son of the family. Eventually, he'll go back to inherit the family business. Do you think a family like theirs would ever accept a divorced woman like you? That comment hit a nerve. What's wrong with being divorced? Is being divorced a woman's fault? Many women get divorced simply because they had bad luck and ended up with scumbags. Kevin, it's lucky you've got some money. Otherwise, with that bad temper of yours, your fondness for emotional coldness in marriage, and the way you pick fights with your ex-wife even after the divorce, you'd be a lifelong bachelor back in my village. Kevin, uncharacteristically, was at a loss for words and his face darkened, but I couldn't help feeling a bit satisfied. Ignoring his sour expression, I turned to leave. Unexpectedly, I found Sam standing nearby, having overheard at least part of the conversation. I cleared my throat. I'm usually quite gentle. You know, I'm not always like this. Do you believe me? Sam nodded. I believe you. As we walked, we both exchanged a glance and, without a word, burst into a shared smile. I asked, "What are you smiling about?" Diana, you're kind of adorable when you're mad. Of course, and I think you made some great points. I may not be a teenage girl anymore, but being complimented by a handsome man who's clearly interested in you still makes your cheeks heat up. I quickly walked ahead, trying to hide it. Sam followed at a relaxed pace. Diana, the most important thing is, I control my own marriage. It has nothing to do with my family. Diana, did you hear me? Chapter 14. A week before Kevin's wedding, to my surprise, Lucas came to visit me. accompanied by the housekeeper. Lucas was almost 8 now. He had lost his baby fat and was growing taller, looking more and more like Kevin. "Hi, Lucas." His eyes were slightly red. "Mom." I took Lucas upstairs. "Did your dad agree to let you come?" I knew the housekeeper wouldn't have brought Lucas without Kevin's permission. Lucas nodded. "Mom, have you completely abandoned me?" I smiled a little. "I haven't abandoned you. It's always been you who didn't want me." "Then why won't you come home?" I sighed softly. "I divorced your father." "Divorced people don't live together." Lucas turned his head, eyes downcast, staring at the floor. "Can't you come back for my sake? How can you say you haven't abandoned me when you're like this?" "Lucas, why should I go back just because of you?" Even though Lucas was still young, he was very clever. I didn't treat him like a small child in conversation because he understood what I was saying. There was a time when, driven by the system's mission and my desperation to survive, and because I lacked love, I clung too hard to the idea of having the perfect family, a loving husband and a cute child. I was so attached to it. But the tighter you hold on to something, the faster it slips through your fingers, like sand. For the past 5 years, I revolved around you and your father, losing sight of myself. That kind of self-sacrificing devotion doesn't make sense. It didn't make me happy. You have to love yourself first before you can love others. Lucas, there's nothing wrong with me loving myself first. Lucas seemed to understand only partially. He mumbled softly. "Then why didn't you take me with you when you got divorced?" I looked at him seriously and said, "I could have taken you with me. I could have stayed in this world. And after all, I did give birth to you. So I do have a responsibility to you." "But Lucas, think about it carefully. If you live with me, you won't have luxury cars, nor a large inheritance, nor a team of maids and drivers catering to your every need. All I can offer is the simple life you see in front of you. Would you want that?" Lucas hung his head in silence. "I know my own child. He has his own choices." Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, a pink, cheerful little bundle launched herself into my arms. "Diana. Diana, I want some pear hawthorn candy." Sophia blinked when she saw Lucas. "Diana, is this handsome brother your son?" I smiled and nodded. Sophia grabbed a handful of candy from the table and handed it to Lucas. "Big brother, eat this. Diana makes it so yummy. It's healthy and delicious, way better than store-bought candy." Lucas took the candy, and then, he suddenly started crying. "Mom, I'm sorry." I knew he was remembering the time he had thrown away the candy I made for him like it was trash. Sometimes, the things you throw away with your own hands are hard to get back. Love is the same. Chapter 15. Kevin married Melissa. The wedding was grand and extravagant, making headlines everywhere. In the pictures, Melissa was all smiles, but Kevin's face was expressionless. Lucas, dressed in an elegant little suit as the ring bearer, mirrored his father's lack of emotion. His wish from when he was 5 years old had finally come true. All I could say was, "Son, this was your wish, so now you have to live with it." Strangely enough, the people most excited about Kevin's wedding were Sam and Sophia. The two of them insisted on taking me to a resort for a vacation. "Diana, there's a beautiful starry sky over there. We can even set off fireworks." Sophia twirled around happily. I love fireworks the most. Seeing Sophia gradually come out of the shadow of losing her parents and become happier day by day made me feel happy too. Under the night sky, we ate hot pot and cut watermelon. The stars in the sky were countless, and fireflies buzzed around with their glowing tails, while the frogs in the nearby pond croaked in harmony. Honestly, this is the kind of life I've always wanted. Sophia handed me a slice of watermelon and said, "Diana, your ex-husband got married. Are you sad?" I nearly choked on the watermelon. "Who told you to ask that?" "Daddy didn't tell me. I asked on my own." Sam's hand trembled as he held his teacup. "Diana, don't be sad. You still have us. Even if that handsome brother calls someone else mom. But you still have me. I can be your baby, okay?" I laughed and pinched her chubby cheek. "Is there anything else you want to say? Just say it all at once." Sophia cleared her throat like an adult. "If you think having me as your baby isn't enough, my dad can be your husband too." This time, it was my hand that trembled. Little Sophia, as if the situation wasn't awkward enough, loudly turned to Sam, who seemed very busy doing absolutely nothing. Right, Daddy? You can, right? You can be Diana's husband, right? Sam quietly responded with a soft but the tips of his ears turned red. He then looked up at the sky, at Sophia, at the trees, at the flowers, anywhere but me. Chapter 16. Happy times always seem to fly by like they've been sped up. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. To be honest, I had a really good time during the 3 years after the divorce. My only regret? Not divorcing Kevin sooner. Host. On the 3rd of next month, at 4 p.m., the program will activate. Do you want to stay or leave? The system seemed surprised when it heard my answer. Are you sure you want to leave? Diana, I thought you'd choose to stay. Chapter 17. Kevin couldn't tell if marrying Melissa had been more about love or about anger toward Diana. Life after the wedding had been dull. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had changed. He had inexplicably developed a habit of drinking heavily. A few glasses of strong liquor would numb his nerves. And for a brief moment, he'd feel alive. Otherwise, when sober, he always felt like Diana's shadow still lingered in the house. Impossible to dispel. Damn it, how is it that even drunk, I still see Diana? The voice that responded was cold. Much colder than Diana's soft, warm voice. I'm Melissa, not Diana. Obviously. Kevin, if Diana is still in your heart, why the hell did you marry me? The alcohol made his head pound, leaving him unable to think clearly. Was Diana still in his heart? No, right? He had always been cold toward Diana, feeling she was neither important or essential. Or was she? He vaguely remembered that when Melissa had married abroad, he had felt only a slight sadness, without lingering regrets or the thought that he should have chased after her. But after divorcing Diana, it felt like being cut slowly with a dull knife, never noticing the pain at first. But now the wounds were tearing open, hurting deeply. In truth, he had wanted a warm home, too. In the past, he had been stubbornly convinced that he didn't need one. Melissa, what do you want? A divorce. Is that it? Living in constant arguments and insults was exhausting. She must be tired, too. It turns out, not loving someone is an incredibly tiring thing. Melissa bit her lip, her eyes red at the edges. Kevin, you were the one who wanted to marry me. I'll never divorce you. Not even if I die. We'll just keep torturing each other for the rest of our lives. Neither of us will find peace. With that, Melissa stormed out, slamming the door in her high heels. Kevin glanced across the hallway and saw Lucas, expressionless, closing his own door. Was this even a home anymore? Damn it. It's like 3 strangers living together. The wine glass in his hand smashed against the wall, shattering on impact. Broken, completely broken, and it would never be whole again. Chapter 18. The night before my departure. I couldn't sleep. It felt like when I was a child, staying awake the night before a big trip. I had already told Lucas and Sophia about my leaving. Lucas remained calm, but when I said I was leaving, his eyes reddened. Mom, I can't make you stay. You are your own person first, and I respect your decision. Thank you, Lucas, for understanding. We're mother and son. After all, there's no deep hatred between us, but we're not particularly close either. The bond of blood remains, yet it's faint. We respect each other, and that seems to fit us. Sophia cried until her eyes were swollen, trying to act all grown up. Diana, I'll be okay. If you want to go home, go home. But up there, you better think about me. Boo-hoo. I wiped her tears tenderly. You're making it sound like I'm going to heaven. I'm just going home. Sweetheart, don't cry so hard. Sophia pouted. My dad's been crying secretly too. I paused. Sam, crying? A man over 6 feet tall? I hadn't seen him in over a week. I'd heard the hospital was incredibly busy, so much so that he barely had time to sleep. I thought about it and decided, before I leave, I'll see him one last time. Chapter 19. I had never seen such chaos in a hospital before. Blood splattered across the entire wall. A group of doctors and nurses hurriedly pushed a patient towards the operating room. and in a glimpse, I saw that the patient was wearing a white coat. My pupils contracted. Who was that patient? I couldn't get through the crowd, but someone nearby told me. A middle-aged patient attacked a doctor and then jumped to his death. The doctor who was attacked, Dr. Eric, is a well-respected and highly skilled physician. It's heartbreaking. I pressed my hand against my chest, my heart racing uncontrollably. I had met Dr. Eric before. He was one of Sam's colleagues and good friends, a kind, gentle doctor. More voices of criticism from the patient's family reached my ears. That Sam is truly heartless. Instead of rushing to save Dr. Eric, he chose to save the murderer. Maybe he's jealous that Dr. Eric's medical skills are better than his. Maybe another doctor was already treating Dr. Eric, and Sam couldn't get in, so he decided to help the attacker. Rubbish. They didn't understand anything. Sam would never be like that. I had no energy to argue with them, so I anxiously waited for the outcome of the surgeries. The doors to the operating room finally opened. 2 pieces of good news followed. Dr. Eric has been saved and is now out of danger. It's a medical miracle. And the murderer has also been saved by Dr. Sam. I finally let out a breath of relief. Now I had the energy to set those clueless relatives straight. Dr. Eric was already being treated by highly skilled specialists. Sam didn't need to force his way in and create chaos. This is a hospital, not a marketplace. More people don't mean better results. As for the murderer, it's good that Sam saved him. He should live to see himself convicted, shamed by the world, and condemned for his actions. Letting him die would have been too easy for a scumbag like that. The people who had criticized Sam earlier turned red and fell silent. When I turned around, I saw that Sam had overheard everything again. He looked utterly exhausted, but his smile was bright. Diana, thank you for standing up for me. Otherwise, I might have been wronged to death. In a quiet moment, he leaned in and asked softly, "You came to see me to tell me you're not leaving tomorrow, right?" I knew he was talking about my departure from the system. I smiled. Sorry, but tomorrow, I am leaving. Chapter 20. Today was Melissa's birthday, and she was throwing an extravagant party at the villa. Kevin let her have her fun. At this point, besides money, there wasn't much else he could give her. Yesterday, Lucas had told the housekeeper he was going out to see Diana. Kevin didn't stop him. These days, Lucas spoke more to the housekeeper and maids than to him. But today, unexpectedly, Lucas knocked on Kevin's study door. His eyes were red, as if he had just been crying. Kevin frowned. "Didn't I tell you that boys shouldn't cry for no reason? You cried yesterday, and now you're crying again?" Lucas spoke softly, his voice heavy with sadness. "Mom is leaving today. She's going back to her own home, and she's never coming back." With that, Lucas walked away. It took Kevin a while to process what Lucas had said. He inhaled a deep drag of his cigarette, an odd sense of panic swelling in his chest. He believed Diana wouldn't lie. Her system was taking her back. Now, he found himself actually believing that she had a system. Kevin grabbed his car keys from the desk and headed downstairs. But as soon as he opened the door, Melissa was standing outside. She stepped inside and slammed the door shut behind her. "Today is my birthday, and you're going to see her? Kevin, you bastard. Have you ever thought about my feelings?" Kevin didn't argue. At this point, he couldn't argue. Melissa pressed her body against the door, blocking his way. She cried and yelled, her perfectly applied makeup smeared halfway across her face. Kevin gritted his teeth. "Move. Today. I won't let you go after her, even if I die." Kevin didn't want to hurt her, because, in a way, he pitied her, a woman whose husband didn't love her. He simply stood by the window and let out a cold laugh. "Melissa, I don't care about you, but please don't get in my way. And have you ever considered my feelings when you did those awful things?" Melissa's face visibly paled. "What things?" Kevin looked at her as if she were a stranger. "The assistant, the director. Do what you want, but stop messing with people around me." Melissa burst into hysterical sobs. "If it weren't for your neglect, your emotional abuse, would I have done anything wrong?" Kevin glanced at his watch. There was no time. He opened the second-floor window and jumped out. If he didn't leave now, he felt like he was going to lose his mind. Kevin got into his car, slammed his foot on the gas pedal, and sped away. This might be his last chance, his last hope that Diana would stay. But things didn't go as planned. Kevin sped recklessly down the road, and at a sharp corner, he collided head-on with an oncoming sports car. The screeching sound of metal crashing filled the air, and he completely lost control of the vehicle. His consciousness began to fade. The airbags deployed. Blood dripped steadily from his head. One of his legs was trapped beneath the seat. Completely immobile, probably ruined. For the first time since he became an adult, Kevin cried. Cried like a child. He knew now, he had no chance left. He would never have the chance to keep Diana. Chapter 21. Today is the day I'm supposed to leave. But I didn't. No one knew. It took me a while, but I finally found Sam and his daughter. Under the fading light of the sunset, Sam stood there like a finely sculpted statue. He quietly watched the distant coastline, his expression both lonely and defeated. Meanwhile, little Sophia was busy digging in the sand with the small shovel I had given her. As she dug, she muttered softly to herself. I stepped closer, and I couldn't help but laugh when I heard her. Crab, don't come and pinch me. Diana's gone, and I had to think of 100 happy things just to keep myself from crying. Daddy can hold it in, and so can I, but if you pinch me and it hurts, I'll really cry. I crouched down and gently moved the little crabs out of her way. Go ahead. Keep digging, sweetheart. Sophia looked at me for a moment, completely stunned, before turning around and yelling, Daddy, come quick! I'm hallucinating in broad daylight. I'm seeing Diana, in the glow of the sunset. Sam's lips slowly curled into a smile, his eyes still tinged with a bit of redness. Sophia, it's real. Diana's come back. Sophia's joy exploded. Diana, you're not leaving, right? Sam casually stuffed his hands into his pockets. Didn't you say you were leaving today? I pointed to the cake sitting nearby. It's your birthday today. Can't I go out and buy a cake? Sam's smile grew visibly brighter. Sophia ran in circles on the beach, giggling as the waves chased her tiny feet. Sam's eyes shimmered. Hey, you didn't delay going home because of us, did you? That would make us feel really bad. Diana. I raised an eyebrow, grinning. Sam, you're starting to sound a bit manipulative. Of course it wasn't because of you guys. It's just that, for now, I can't go back. Chapter 22. Yesterday, while I was at the hospital, the system was still complaining. As expected, women are fickle. Last month, you said you were leaving, and now you want to stay? System, can you help me? Use my points to keep Dr. Eric alive, okay? Because the system had told me that originally, Dr. Eric wasn't going to make it. His life was supposed to end tragically. Sure, host. But once you confirm, all your points will be wiped out at once, and you won't have anything left. You also won't be able to return home. It's fine. System, I'll save up again. If it's not enough, I'll just borrow some of your points. The system was furious. You ungrateful human. Stop thinking about using mine. I'm a selfish and stingy system. No, you're a kind system. I knew. In truth, there was never a 3-year waiting period. The system had made it up. The central system wouldn't enforce such a ridiculous rule, because the system wanted me to be happy more than anyone else. In that other world, I was a lonely comatose person, with no family or friends waiting for me. The system wanted me to find happiness in this world. Even the house I'm living in now was recommended by the system. Host, this one is perfect. I feel like if you live here, both of us will prosper. How is a system going to get rich? It was just helping me meet people who were meant to cross my path. The system didn't waste its efforts. Thanks to it, I met Sam and Sophia. Chapter 23. I made a deal with the system and used all my points to keep Dr. Eric alive. So, I can't leave now. As soon as I finished speaking, Sam froze, then suddenly pulled me into his arms. Cold tears streamed down his face and into my neck. Diana, thank you. You're truly amazing. Sophia clapped her hands and laughed. Daddy, aren't you embarrassed? You're a grown-up, but you're crying more than me. I laughed and pushed him away gently. Yeah, A grown man over 6 feet tall. Crying like this, is he trying to make a new ocean? Sam straightened up and cleared his throat. I'm not just 6 feet. I blinked. What do you mean? I'm 6'2¾". I burst into laughter, and Sophia giggled along with me, until the sunset disappeared beneath the horizon. The three of us, bathed in the golden light of dusk, walked home together. Home, our home.